Russia wakes up to explosions every day. In one of the territories occupied by Russia, there was an explosion that surprised everyone. In this explosion, Putin's former aide and one of his close friends was injured. It is not known who could be harmed by the explosions. Very critical moments as the war continues. Is this a turning point? What happened? Let's analyze the details together. There is not just a war in Ukraine. Putin is trying to assimilate the occupied territories. Programs started to be organized in the occupied territories on Putin's instructions. People with symbolic value for Russia were sent to these regions. The task of these people in the programs organized in a carry-out activities to Russify the region. On the other hand, it is known that Russia obliged Ukrainian children under the age of 40 to have a passport and become citizens of the Russian Federation. Russia is forcing young children in the occupied Ukrainian territories to become Russian citizens. Putin's aim is to ensure that the Ukrainians to whom he gives citizenship and passports migrate to Russia. With his wrong decisions, Putin is also causing the Russian people to lose faith in him. Putin, who thinks he is on his own, is at a loss as to what to do. Russia's plans were for the Ukrainian people to accept it in a short time. But the Ukrainian people continued their resistance in the war very strongly in the assimilation policies. There are problems between the Ukrainian people and the Russian soldiers. Russian soldiers are harming the people. On the other hand, they occupy the most symbolic buildings of Ukraine, which are important for the people. They confiscate hotels in the regions they occupy in Ukraine. It is known that Russian commanders and senior executives stay in these hotels. A hotel was seized in Donetsk, one of the regions occupied by the Russian army. Dmitry Rogozin was hiding in this hotel. Ukrainian intelligence learned that Rogozin had been hiding in the hotel for a long time. Immediately afterwards, an operation was organized in the hotel. In this operation, Rogozin was hit by shrapnel fragments. It is said that he suffered cuts in certain parts of his body. Rogozin's aide told the Russian press that he thought it was a targeted attack. Ukrainian media reports, on the other hand, completely clarified the incident. Rogozin and senior commanders had gathered at the hotel to celebrate Rogozin's birthday. The Ukrainian army had planned this attack on Rogozin's birthday celebration. What was the reason for the Ukrainian military to plan this attack? How did it plan the attack? Why was it so important to organize the attack? Let's try to answer our questions with Rogozin's statements. According to Rogozin's statements, someone leaked information. He said that there were attacks on many nearby points other than the hotel area, where they were located, and that these attacks were accurate. Rogozin has set Russia on fire with his statements. Russian generals suspect each other. It is not known who might have leaked information. After Rogozin's statements, the security weakness in the Russian intelligence was revealed. Ukraine continues to drag Russia into chaos with its operations. The KGB is working hard to find the general who leaked the information. 2 people were killed in this Ukrainian attack, but the identities of the dead have not been released. The dead could be important people for the Russian military. What was the reason for the gathering of important Russian military figures on Rogozin's birthday? To understand this reason, we need to know about Rogozin. Rogozin is one of the most prominent figures in Russian politics. 19 years ago, he was one of the leaders of the far-right Rodina party, which managed to influence a large majority of the Russian people. The Rodina party made a significant breakthrough in Russian politics by winning 9.2% of the vote in the elections. This made him the leader of the 4th most popular party in Russia. In a very short time, he managed to influence Russia with his speeches and became one of the most popular politicians. Rogozin, one of Rodina's leaders, managed to become the head of the party in as little as 2 years. Under Rogozin, Rodina became the 2nd largest political party in Russia. He was much talked about for his opposition to Putin. Rogozin became one of the most influential politicians in Russia. But Rogozin decided to resign when his achievements were being recognized. After a while, he announced his support for Putin. This decision was met with astonishment by the Russian public. Putin did not refuse Rogozin's support. And in 2008, Putin appointed Dmitry Rogozin as ambassador to NATO. Rogozin rose rapidly after his ambassadorship to NATO, and 3 years later, he was appointed as Putin's deputy prime minister in charge of defense and space industries. He supported Putin's aggressive stance. His statements during the invasion of Crimea in 2014 made the world agenda. Rogozin was even sanctioned by Barack Obama for his statements. He was one of the first people to be sanctioned by the US President Barack Obama. He was banned from entering the US and his assets were frozen. Putin's deputy has been as tough as Putin in politics. Throughout his tenure, he caused problems with his aggressive statements. He caused diplomatic problems with countries like Moldova and Romania. Upon diplomatic problems, the Moldovan government declared Rogozin persona non grata. At every opportunity, he argued that the expansion of Russia's borders was a necessity. In 2018, Rogozin was appointed by Putin to head the Russian state space agency Roscosmos. Roscosmos was a state agency, but Rogozin turned it into a state-owned company in the last few years. Rogozin, who did not stop after he was appointed as the head of this mission, continued to threaten the world with space studies. Rogozin's harshest statements came during the Russia-Ukraine war. Stating that he was disturbed by the sanctions against Russia, Rogozin openly threatened the whole world. He said that the International Space Station could leave orbit without knowing how. He never stopped threatening the US and Europe. Who will save the ISS from an uncontrolled orbit, and will it fall on the United States or Europe? This did nothing but worsen the war. Rogozin sounded so threatening that even Putin was bored. The opposition in Russia was very angry with Rogozin's behavior. Nobody liked the fact that he was constantly threatening the whole world with nuclear weapons. This year, protests were organized and Rogozin was removed as head of Roscosmos. After his removal, the Kremlin said it was a move to ease tensions. Rogozin, who continued to make statements despite his dismissal, continued to influence Putin and the government. Rogozin was one of the most influential figures in the Russian army. He had close relations with most commanders in the army. Russian commanders liked Rogozin's attitude. That's why they decided to celebrate Rogozin's birthday at a hotel in Donetsk. But the birthday did not go as they expected. The Ukrainian military had planned a bigger surprise for Rogozin. A big celebration for Rogozin was to be organized at the hotel. Russian generals and some politicians were going to give him many gifts. But the Ukrainian army sent the most different gift to Rogozin. The missiles sent by the Ukrainian army during the celebration became a nightmare for Rogozin. After the explosion, everyone in the hotel panicked. There is no clear information about how many people were injured. The Kremlin is doing everything in its power to cover up this attack, as they cover up everything else. The unexpected and unpreventable attack on important people for Russia is seen as one of Putin's biggest failures. Putin is trying to cover up this incident. The identities of the two people who died in the attack are still under investigation. Who do you think could have leaked information to Ukraine? What are your thoughts on the attack targeting Rogozin? Do you think the Ukrainian army will achieve victory with its successful operations? Share your thoughts with us. Follow us to be informed about the developments.